And therefore, we know going back to last fall, after USC and UCLA made their move to the Big Ten, that Oregon and Washington applied for membership to the Big Ten. Now, this again confirmed by Brett McMurphy over the weekend and reported, and I use again the quotes, vetted and cleared. Matt, how did you take that? Because I jumped on here live as soon as I could possibly jump on here to take calls and questions and provide my analysis on the situation. I think a lot of people that aren't necessarily understanding of those terms, and if they're used properly, and again, the interpretation could go in a number of directions, that vetted and cleared, to a lot of people, they see that as, oh, vetted and cleared like they're joining. I see it most likely as just another step in the process that the Big Ten reviewed the applications and they cleared them under their guides. It's almost like a background check for an employer that is looking to interview a collection of people for a job opening, and they've got 20 job applicants and they vetted and cleared 18 of the 20, and now they're down to 18. That's at least kind of how I view it, or get that feel that it's just another step in the process.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty vague, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, like, it's not really the fast track is now, in evidence. Like, we're preparing the runway, we're preparing for the landing for this transition. So it just really struck me as kind of odd, that just odd terminology, odd phrasing. I pretty much share your view. Like, this is just like the Big Ten has looked into it. But like, if there was like more there, if there was more of a news value to this, like there would be more detail in terms of the Big Ten, actually courting Oregon and Washington. And, hey, it's not just because he works with us here at the Voice of College Football, but it's because like he really knows his stuff in terms of the administrative back channels and the political histories of these institutions. But Tony Altomore, has said, like, there are deeply embedded structural and academic reasons why Washington and Oregon won't move to the Big Ten. And I trust Tony on that. Now, I will say, like, first couple weeks after the USC move to the Big Ten, the story that John Wilner broke on June 30, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of that. In the first few weeks, I thought, yeah, of course, Washington and Oregon are going to the Big Ten. But then the deeper education that Tony has provided for me and for you and for all of us here at the Voice of College Football, like, that was a real seminar in terms of, no, like this, there are much deeper, bigger considerations, and there are things that specifically were going on at USC and UCLA that lent itself to the Big Ten getting those two schools. So I'm going to trust Tony on that. But I think the other thing is, like, Kevin Warren's no longer Big Ten commissioner, and he's the guy who engineered the move. And like, the Big Ten members were not happy with Kevin Warren. Like, that remains a fascinating part of all this, is that Kevin Warren never really hit it off with Big Ten membership. The way the pandemic was handled, that was a big strike against him. It decreased his political clout in the room, and it's part of what made the USC UCLA move so surprising. But like, the Big Ten was not like, yes, like, this is what we always wanted. Like, member schools were not really viewing it that way. So the idea that a new commissioner, Warren's replacement, is now going to add 2 more teams, and of course, if you add 2 more teams, you have an 18-team conference. That's really unwieldy. Like, 16 makes sense because you can have 2 8-team halves, and that plays, somewhat more neatly into the framework for your league, for your conference. So like, when you divide up all the different components of this, I'm not convinced that a Washington Oregon move to the Big Ten is like just around the corner. I still foresee short-term stability. But Mark, and this really is another transition point in terms of, we can stay within the larger realm of college sports realignment, but move on from the Washington Big Ten story. Like, this is a big deal. This 7 school group in the ACC, they're testing the grant of rights, and to see, what they're poking around for the legal loopholes and what they can get away with. I'm sure they're, like Florida State has already been pretty overt in terms of, when can we pay the smallest exit fee that's going to give us the most value, the biggest upside. And this is something that I have believed all the way through. It's not something where I've changed my mind. This is something I've really, since the USC UCLA moved to the Big Ten, I've believed this. And I'm now even more convinced of it, that in 7 to 10 years, somewhere around that range, Florida State and Clemson, probably Miami, but definitely Florida State and Clemson, I'm going to call my shot on those 2 schools. They will be in the SEC. I just, you can sense that they're itching to get out of the ACC. They want the football prestige. They want the high-end treatment. They don't think they're getting it from the ACC, which, has ESPN has a very friendly deal with that conference. It's friendly to ESPN, not as much to the member schools. Like, that to me seems like that's going to be the next big thing at the very end of the 2020s, the start of the 2030s. That's going to be the next really big kaboom transformation, alteration in college sports. But the Big Ten, I don't see anything happening in the immediate future. The other thing to keep in mind is that, in 2026, it's the new playoff configuration and new, well, I should say the new television arrangement. A new round of TV deals are going to be hammered out. Like, that's going to be the multi-network, one would think, contract for the college football playoff, after this 12-year deal runs its course at the end of 2025. So, like, we're not going to see any significant move for the next few years through 2025. It's going to be at the back end of this decade, if anything happens. And I think if anything does happen, it's going to be ACC teams going to the SEC. And that's when we're all going to have to reconsider the landscape.
Part of the McMurphy report, as I understood it, was that what made the Washington-Oregon story viable in a shorter term was that NBC and CBS had moved off of their numbers, and the Big Ten was able to get to their 2 TV partners and move them to a higher number to be able to accommodate entry and redistribution of that TV money. And so that was part of what made that viable in a shorter period of time before the contract runs out.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate read of it. And there are all those moving parts to consider in the larger workings of this.
So you don't believe or really see any of those top tier schools at the ACC, meaning top tier in regards to their football prowess, moving to the Big Ten?
No, I can't see that happening.
No?
I think they're definitely, I mean, like the ACC school or schools moving to the Big Ten would seem to be North Carolina and or Duke, because, Jim Delaney, has a history with those schools, former Big Ten commissioner, and their academic reputation. Like, and this is another Tony Altomore concept that, USC to the Big Ten, USC with its worldwide reputation in research, development, academia, the things that chancellors and presidents care about, like North Carolina and Duke bring that same kind of status and cachet to the Big Ten. Like, I definitely do not see North Carolina and Duke moving to the SEC, but I do see Florida State, Clemson, the schools that, that hang their hat on football, that's the natural place where they want to be. And Florida State, Alabama, and Clemson versus LSU, that's a winning ticket. That's a winning formula in terms of getting tremendous television revenue. And of course, you have Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC as well. So like, if you want to be the best, you have to play the best. And I'm sure that, you know, and let's also bring up the point that Florida State is primed for a return to the big time this year. Now, maybe it might not work out perfectly, but like Florida State certainly has a chance to win the ACC, to revive that rivalry with Clemson. If for the sake of argument, you know, we assume that Florida State and Clemson, you know, are back to knocking heads and playing the great games, such as what we saw in that 2012 through 2015 window under Jimbo Fisher and Dabo, and that era. Like that's going to make it's not only going to make their rivalry matter more, but it's going to make that rivalry more appealing within an SEC, or at least if not SEC, within a Southern context. And that's also going to be part of the reason for not going to the Big Ten. I really do see the SEC as the destination, and not the Big Ten. Now, I will say, just as a counterpoint, and this is an interesting thing to contemplate, and because I saw Tony Altimore tweeting about this, is that if Ron DeSantis, and this is not going to get into the weeds politically in terms of ideology and, you know, what's good, what's not. This is just about college sports realignment. Ron DeSantis, if it has to play his hand in a certain way, if he wants Florida State to be able to go to the SEC in several years, as Florida State, I think it seems Florida State wants to do, then Ron DeSantis and Disney, just politically and economically, they're going to have to arrive at a truce, because they've been knocking heads. So just in terms of the politics of college football, college sports, that is an interesting plot point that Tony Altimore has made note of, and it's a good one, because if you're going to get Disney money in an SEC television deal, well, the governor of your state, who, you know, is located in the city where your university is, Tallahassee, your governor has to be, you know, playing fair, or not, if not fair, he has to be playing in a way that Disney's going to find it tolerable. So that is definitely something to watch. If this was an online sports book, I think that the odds of Ron DeSantis getting a mention here at the Voice of College Football would have been like plus 100,000. So if you made a bet, like, okay, you can retire. But anyway, like Tony Altimore made note of it, and it's a very interesting point to contemplate as we look at college sports realignment and what Florida State in particular is going to do. This is not so much a Clemson point, but it definitely is a Florida State point, that if you want Disney money, well, something's going to have to be smoothed out in the state of Florida's government.
We will get our researchers on that to determine if the name Ron DeSantis has ever been uttered here at the Voice of College Football. They will go through the volumes and volumes, logs, and millions of hours of video on all the channels.
You can mention that on your next Florida State live show. Like, yes, that would be a very interesting topic that you could go deep on.
It would be a great topic. We come up on a Florida State Live Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, everyone. But it also gives more ammunition for me and my Florida State Big Ten argument because of that relationship, or lack of a relationship, between Disney and the governor's office there. I also believe that Florida State's working on AAU membership. So they are working on that and have been for the last couple of years. I also believe that if you look at courtesy our buddy Tony Altimore and his charts, the status of Miami and Florida State would be smack dab in the middle of the Big Ten. Florida State has increased its academic value and credibility a ton in recent years, and has pretty much matched Miami, and they would be mid-level, right in that range of Big Ten schools academically. And then the last point, from a Big Ten standpoint, the only thing that the Big Ten does not bring to the table, they bring everything to the table to run this sport, except they don't have enough football players in the footprint. And so if I'm the Big Ten, I go to Florida and I get Miami and Florida State. That would be my play if I were the Big Ten.
And you make a very compelling case. I I just think it's more aligned with the more elitist identities of North Carolina and Duke. But like, you make a compelling case, and I mean, hey, the Big Ten's reached into Southern California, so why not go into another talent-rich, place with significantly sized markets? Like, like the only place left for the Big Ten to go would be Texas. You could get a Sun Belt reach across the lower southern half of the United States. So like, there's plenty to recommend your view. I think simply in terms of where the politics currently stand, they'd look more to Chapel Hill first than they would at the state of Florida. But like, you laid out a very compelling argument, to be sure.
Folks, if you enjoy these kind of segments and these kind of discussions, join Matt and I on the YouTube membership right here at the Voice of College Football USC. You can get that just on the front page there. Just hit join, make the selection, and you get bonus segments from Matt and myself. And furthermore, if you enjoy these kind of breakdowns, as many of these schools have been rumored to go to a various conference, I've got a number of videos posted on the main channel and on the various team channels where I've looked at, let's say, Florida State versus the SEC. How has Florida State performed against the SEC since the year 2000? And it's not just okay, Florida State's 13-9 against the SEC. I guess they've done pretty good. That's that. No. How good are those Florida State teams? How good are the SEC teams that they've played? What are the winning percentages? Is that a fair record comparison to make? What were the consequences of those games? How would Florida State project into the future against the SEC, and why? We've done those breakdowns for Florida State against the Big Ten and the SEC, Miami against the SEC and the Big Ten, Clemson against the SEC and the Big Ten, and on and on. I won't go through the whole litany, and the Pac-12 contingent of the Arizona schools and Washington and Oregon, et cetera, in all these various scenarios. So people tend to enjoy that perspective, and so we provided that.
Just while Mark is talking about some of the things that he's done that you can get on the main channel at the Voice of College Football, I want to bring up, you can join our USC channel here. And again, on the homepage of the USC channel in the upper right-hand corner, there's a join button. You push that, you click that button, you get a drop down 3 tiers of membership. If you join the middle tier or the top tier, you get exclusive bonus content. And Mark and I have put out some bonus segments on USC and the Pac-12, Lincoln Riley, so special bonus content for members. And so spread the word and join up here at the Voice of College Football for not just these regular live streams, but also bonus cuts, bonus segments, bonus live streams, even more of the content that you crave here at the Voice of College Football.
Don't believe I've done a breakdown on SMU and San Diego State against the Pac-12. I've lost track. I've done so many of these things. Speaking to the conversation we just had, I did a number of mock-up Washington, Oregon in the Big Ten and what that looks like or could look like with a full 18-team conference, which seems a bit ridiculous, but just a 1 through 18, similar to what's currently in the Big 12, but with only 10 teams, of course, or 3 6-team divisions, or 2 5-team divisions and 2 4-team divisions. So a number of things you can do there. But as Matt earlier said, they are quite wieldy,